Eu sabia muito pouco sobre a Guiana. Passei o meu primeiro dia perdido na complexidade cultural e política do país.
What is cassava bread?
Cassava is a vegetable that you cook to eat.
Okay, which one?
Carafe. I have nice things selling here at G-Block for Q.
Até que no segundo dia eu conheci uma figura que daria rumo novo à minha viagem.
This is my friend Malcolm.
Malcolm é motorista de táxi. Então a gente andou muito pra lá e pra cá, atrás de boas imagens, boas histórias. Até que soubemos de um acontecimento que a princípio parecia muito triste e também interessante do ponto de vista jornalístico. Uma mulher, Donna Harold, acabara de ser assassinada sem nenhum motivo depois de buscar os filhos na escola. Já havia bastante gente quando Malcolm e eu chegamos ao funeral aqui no centro de Georgetown, a capital da Guiana. E eu não tinha ainda a menor ideia de que estava começando o meu melhor dia em quase 2 anos de passagem pela América Latina. Há 10 anos que eu sonho com o que chamo de interferência zero. Eu, o único branco, não interfiro. A minha câmera de vídeo não interfere. Nos tornamos invisíveis. É num funeral na Guiana que alcanço o grau máximo de invisibilidade da minha história. Donna Harold tinha 47 anos e foi morta pela polícia, supostamente por engano. A polícia daqui é quase toda afro-guyanense. Ainda assim, esse episódio traz à tona o principal conflito político e racial da Guiana. Negros de um lado, indianos do outro.
Over 400 African descendants have been killed unlawfully in Guyana, and mainly by the armed forces being the police, whose duty is to service and protect. So just keep continuing. If it is that any Indian descendant that inhabiting Guyana, if any one of them should die under these circumstances, you'll see relevant ministers from the government, you'll even see the president visited. But you don't see this when an African dies.
Certainly here in Guyana, I believe that diversity, instead of being an enormous strength, which is what it ought to be, has turned out to be a very debilitating weakness for us. And the important point to recognize, I think, is that the conflict between these two major racial groups in Guyana, which is our most enduring problem, that conflict is not something that happened overnight. It is something that is rooted deeply in our own history. Because the slaves, after the abolition of slavery, did not simply flee the plantations. What they did was they set up cooperative villages adjacent to the plantations, and they began to hire themselves out as labor, as freed labor. They were hiring themselves out to the very plantations on which they had been slaves. And they became so well organized. In fact, they were, as it were, a kind of embryonic proletariat. They began to organize themselves very much like a modern working class. They began to bargain for better wages, better conditions of work, and so on. And they were so effective in terms of their organization that in 1847, they were able to conduct a general strike that shut down the entire sugar industry. Well, of course, the planters realized they had to find an alternative to these freed slaves. So that is when the indentured servants began to come. So when the indentured servants came from India, effectively they came as people who were going to break the strike of the striking African workers. So they really arrived here as a kind of scab labor, you can say. that immediately put the two groups in conflict with each other. And this conflict that originated right there at the beginning, immediately after the abolition of slavery, that was really, I think, manipulated by the sugar planters and so on to keep these groups under control. In fact, there's a story about one of the English planters on the West Coast who wrote to his friend in England. His friend in England had written to him and said, "How do so few of you manage to keep so many of them under control?" And his friend here on the west coast of Demerara wrote him and said, "It's really very simple. We keep them fighting each other."
The muscle.
As I'm a little girl growing up, going to school, I saw this problem where we saw the East Indians would not mix with the Africans, or the Africans would not mix with the East Indians. They have problem walking on the street because you're afraid that the Africans would beat the East Indians and all of this. But then as we started to grow and we started to unite together, everybody started to come together, you know. And so this problem stopped a little, not much, but a little. And then everybody started to get big. And then we started to, we always keep reuniting.
No, it's not much problem.
If we have a party, we invited our neighbors who's Africans, they'll come.
They live well.
They live well.
They live well.
You know. And now with this new president, he see that everything gets better, much better now. You know, so they started to mix with one another now.
The president now, he's Indian descendant.
Yeah.
And he's Indian descendant. He's a president for the past second term.
Since 1999.
Depois que a Guiana se tornou independente, em 1966, dois partidos cresceram em importância e continuam como os principais até hoje. O PPP, Partido Progressista do Povo, de maioria indiana, e o PNC, Congresso Nacional do Povo, de maioria negra. O PPP dos indianos se mantém no poder há bastante tempo, até porque eles representam quase 50% da população. Os negros são o segundo maior grupo étnico.
Is there a big separation, a big gap here between the Indo-Guyanese people and the Afro-Guyanese people?
Yes, there is separation. There's gross discrimination because to get a simple job, you may have all the qualification, but because you're black, you will not get that job in Guyana. And that's a reality, that's a fact. This is not talking race, this is talking facts.
Really, I don't know what had happened. All I know that my mother was shot and killed. No one has come forward and said, well, why she was killed, who killed her. We have not heard from the government or anything like that. What I would like to know, why someone, a government official, didn't come and say anything as yet. I have never heard of a woman being shot and killed. Now, I think my mother was the first person, or is the first person that was shot and killed. And I don't know, it's a woman, an innocent woman just walking with her kids. Someone told me that the police, they saw 11 men running, and I guess they missed the 11 men and saw my mother instead, and I don't know, I really don't know. But when I heard it was the police, I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe it. So now I will have to play the role of mommy and daddy, because the younger ones, her husband, he's not feeling well. Now I have to try and see what I'm going to do. I just have to try and provide, that's all.
Para muita gente, o que aconteceu jamais seria motivo de celebração. E é exatamente isso que mais me emociona e fascina no funeral de Donna Harold.
When a baby is born, most of the time people will cry because they don't know what life will that child have. But when someone is dead, people will rejoice because of the life that the person has before. There is no need to be sorrowful because that person has gone now to the Creator. So that's the difference with being alive and being dead.
Did you see many funerals like the one I saw?
A lot. During my time, durante o período que eu passei lá na Guiana, durante esses 22 anos, vi muitos, tanto funerais dos hindus, dos católicos, dos muçulmanos e dos cristãos. Vi muitos funerais. Cada um é diferente do outro. É incrível, incrível. Por isso que a Guiana é interessante, a cultura negra é muito interessante, a cultura hindu é muito interessante.
O funeral dura o dia inteiro. Depois da primeira parte, dentro de uma capela, todos seguimos juntos até o vilarejo de Buxton, na periferia da cidade. Eu li diversas vezes sobre os perigos em relação ao vilarejo de Buxton, a 20 minutos de carro da capital, Georgetown. Buxton é isso, Buxton é aquilo, um lugar considerado violento por conta dos problemas sociais e tal. Fato é que estou a caminho sem ligar para absolutamente nada disso. O vilarejo de Buxton foi fundado por ex-escravos das plantações de cana-de-açúcar. Um lugar pobre que tem tradição de participação política, luta, protesto.
And I'm a born Buxtonian. And Buxton is a village that is known with great history. It's one of the first villages in history to ever stop the train from moving. Women came together and lie with pregnant women, other men and others, children, lie along the train line in order to stop the train because they wanted the attention of the government. Normally, the people in Buxton does not take foolishness. They always stand up for their rights. They will always represent themselves, whether man, woman, boy, or girl. They're the kind of people that does not have differences in terms of color, race, or creed. But whenever something goes wrong, they will always speak up and represent whatever they believe in. Buxton is one of the villages that is known to have the strongest unity. Whether you're white, black, green, or purple, you will unite as long as you're people. But if you're different in terms of behavior and race, and you're being racist, then you will not be welcome in Buxton.
They fight for their rights.
For their rights, they fight for their rights.
They speak up, right?
That is where the PNC have a lot of strongholders.
Support, yeah,
a lot of supporters is in Buxton. After the Africans and the East Indians, they all arrived, So they decided to when they start to work and they started to gain the money, they decided to bought pieces of land and decided to settle. And Buxton was the first land that the African slaves they bought. The African slave bought this piece of land and they decided to settle there.
Anos depois de perder a minha mãe, 14 anos depois da despedida do meu pai, consigo celebrar a morte dos dois. Eu tinha 18 anos quando a minha mãe morreu. Ela sofria de enfisema pulmonar, sofria muito. Na época eu entendi que mamãe se libertava de um sofrimento terrível. Eu entendia tudo isso, mas chorei muito mais do que celebrei. Na verdade, apenas agradeci aos deuses por terem libertado a minha mãe. Hoje sim, aqui na Guiana, eu celebro, aos prantos, por trás dessa câmera invisível, também a partida do meu querido pai, que se libertou, viúvo que estava, de uma vida solitária e já sem muitos estímulos. Quando o papai se foi de uma hora para outra, por conta de um infarte, eu só enxergava a minha perda pessoal. Sinto muito, Dona Graça e seu Leopoldo, sinto muito. Só agora é que percebo que uma festa assim teria feito muito mais sentido na despedida de vocês.
After death, the person will go to rest. Their soul will return to the Creator. They will have a peaceful life. There will be no more stress, nothing to worry about because they have returned to their Creator, God, who has made and also ordained the life of a person while you're spending your time on earth. Well, based on the circumstances of the death of the person, because she was shot, and information given that it was done by the police. That's the reason why that you will have a greater celebration, a larger turnout with people in terms of support and bearing the mourn and giving the relatives of the deceased their condolence. So normally when a person has died under those circumstances, you will find that people will give a large support.
Por ter muitos indianos, uma das religiões dominantes aqui na Guiana é o hinduísmo. Por esse motivo, também existem muitos muçulmanos. Mas a maioria dos guianenses é cristã. Malcolm, o meu amigo taxista, disse que em Buxton eles são pentecostais, que é uma das religiões protestantes do país. O funeral de Dona Harold parece, em certos momentos, uma grande catarse coletiva. A libertação da alma de uma vítima é celebrada intensamente. Mas basta eu parar um pouco que alguém se aproxima para desabafar.
Me. Yeah, the beat's going, yes. Yeah. Big man, don't make mischief. Get a grip for yourself. Get a grip for yourself. Speak the truth, speak it, cause it out it will. She was murdered. Yes. And your children left to suffer. Nobody come out to see anything. She was murdered. Cold-blooded murder. She was shot straight in your eye. So that mean she did not come back for come back. The heart in intention. Shot with intention. No bypass. No bypass. With all respect, Mr. President, do something for something happen by Almighty, not by hands on here, up there. Get it right.
If you were to take an Indian Guyanese or an African Guyanese and put him or her in modern Africa or modern India, we would be really complete strangers. I mean, the places have nothing to do with us in a very real sense. And I think that for us to develop a Guyanese identity and to be as attached to this landscape and this land and this historical experience that is ours, we need in a very real sense to develop almost a kind of amnesia in relation to those roots. That is my own personal view. So I'm not very attached to the idea. I've been to India myself on a couple of occasions because my son actually lives there at the present time. And I must tell you, I found nothing there that was common to my own experience. Absolutely nothing. And so I myself believe that the history we have here, albeit a very short history, having to do with a couple of centuries, is the history that belongs to us. And we really need to develop it and prize it and so on in a more creative way. I think that harking back to our historical origins in India and Africa is really a form of nostalgism that does us no particular good.
Okay, we understand the pain and the grief. Bishop.
We are gathered here this afternoon to pay the final respects in thanksgiving for the homegoing service of a daughter, a mother, a sister, a friend, one whom we all knew in her lifetime.
Enquanto as pessoas mais religiosas ficam ao redor do caixão, outras tantas celebram no meio da rua, bebendo rum, que é popular por aqui, outros tomam uma cervejinha, alguns fumam maconha, sem problema, o que oficialmente não é um ato legal na Guiana. Eu evito, de ligar a câmera nessas horas. O importante é celebrar a libertação da alma da querida moradora do vilarejo de Buxton, que eu não conheci. Mas, para mim, a despedida de Donna Haraway vai ficar guardada como um acontecimento realmente excepcional. A mulher mais charmosa que eu conheci em 2 anos de passagem para a América Latina é uma guyanense. Negra, cabelo relativamente curto, com alguns fios tingidos de amarelo, olhos grandes, lábios fartos, rosto fino, um dente de ouro aqui na frente. Seios pequenos, pernas compridas e sutilmente torneadas, com um pouco de pelo, 1,75 m por aí, unhas da mão um pouco sujas, sem esmalte e com todo um estilo de caminhar, parar, se virar, que olha, eu entendo muito pouco de moda, mas aquela moça de 22 anos numa passarela, não sei não. Ela tinha ainda uma voz forte, ligeiramente rouca, um inglês quebradíssimo, como se diz, dificílimo de entender. O nome da guyanense, Rochelle, ou Rochelle, sem o sotaque inglês, né? Eu a conheci em pleno funeral. Depois ainda fomos para um bar, ela, outras 15, 20 pessoas e eu, bebemos, comemos peixe frito, rimos muito até às 10 da noite ao som de um ótimo reggae. O Malcolm, o taxista e meu melhor amigo até agora na América do Sul, virou o coordenador do evento pós-funeral. Ele organizava a mesa enorme, administrava a conta, enfim. Lá pelas tantas, me despedi, voltei para o hotel e no dia seguinte iniciei o longo retorno ao Rio de Janeiro com a sensação de ter passado na Guiana, quem diria, na Guiana, os meus melhores dias até agora de passagem para a América Latina.